Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Thompson. It's good to see you all here today. If you can hear me, will you please give me a smiley face so I know that I'm coming through nice and clear? Wonderful. Well, I welcome you guys to this session today. It is a session that I hope will give you a little bit of a positive side of perfectionism. I think a lot of times our gifted kids, giftedness and perfectionism go hand in hand. And a lot of times we look at perfectionism and see it in such a negative light, and it can be. But I would like to try to focus on some positive strategies today to help you in working with your gifted child and helping them cope with their perfectionism in a positive way. So I think it'll be a good session today, and I just welcome you all here. So let me go ahead and change our slide here. I would like to start off with just this little humor for you. Well, don't be sad. Nobody's a perfect cube. Perfectionism, you guys, is a characteristic often found in gifted children, like I said. Parents, educators, and researchers should be aware of the extent of perfectionistic issues because it can be harmful to gifted children. It can harm them with their self-concept, and it can also harm them with their achievement levels. A lot of times underachievement is a common issue among gifted kids, and it can often be attributed to perfectionism. When perfectionism is conceived as pride in somebody's own work and striving for excellence, it can be a good thing for gifted individuals to pursue their goals. But most often, perfectionism also consists of harsh blame, procrastination, avoidance of challenges, and overgeneralization of failures. The need for perfection may also result in anxiety, depression, and difficulty forming secure relationships as well. And so I hope that does send a little bit of that red flag that it is something that's very real, and that it is something that these kids really feel this. And so it is important that we take this serious and we look at these ways to be able to help our children cope with that perfectionism. Since gifted individuals with perfectionistic tendencies may experience some of these negative outcomes, parents and teachers need to better understand the roots of perfectionism and strategies to help your children cope. So what I would like to know first off is, just to kind of get this out here, I'm going to give you pen tools right now. If you want to grab your pen tool, and over here on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see actually instead of the pen, take the typing tool, the A, and it'll pop out, when you click on it, it'll pop out an A without the lines behind it. Go ahead and click on the one without the lines, and then bring your cursor over here on the screen somewhere. Maybe choose the white colored font so we can easily see it, and share with us what are the negative outcomes that you see in your child with perfectionism. How does perfectionism affect your gifted child negatively? Share that with me. Go ahead and take a minute and type that down. And then you can kind of, one reason I do this, that I want you to see what each other is writing. You can put it anywhere on the screen here. And if you want to click on yours and move it, you can click on your arrow at the top left-hand side. And then once you click your arrow, that will allow you to select text and then drag it to somewhere else on the screen. But part of the reason why we like to have these things, your concerns and your thoughts up here is so that you can see that you're not alone, that there's other people that are feeling the exact same thing you are. Okay? All right, so this is great. Go ahead and continue to put these up. Disappoint self when not done well. Refuses to read. Time consuming, yes. It can be very time consuming, and that's difficult from a parent's point of view. When you have a schedule and things that you have to do, you have a lot of other demands in your day. Writer's block, procrastination, fails accidentally on purpose. My son rides a wave or flux. He will go from the perfectionist who throws away his papers. Okay, all right. Excellent, as you described, okay, in our info note. Let me move this one over for you. In the training to someone who seems to have given up. Okay. I don't know if you guys can, you might click on that so you guys can see the rest of what they've written here. And, you know, Brandy's right. Perfectionism is one of the most often mentioned struggles that we have that come from parents of their gifted students. They mention this to their teacher. And so I'm hoping that some of the things we talk about today, you will have several tools to walk away from our training today that will help you. And as you can see, yeah, all of these things here, that, you know, you're not alone. There's people out there that are going through the same thing, and I'm hoping that we can share with one another some of the positive things that that you have tried, that you have seen help, and maybe that will help one another out. I want to share with you something interesting that many of you may remember. This is an example of negative perfectionism, all right? Remember back in 1994, the U.S. national champion figure skater was Nancy Kerrigan. She was attacked when leaving the rink after practice session at the U.S. Olympic trials. She suffered a knee injury from someone hitting her in the knee with a bat. I mean, it was on purpose. They purposely were trying to put her out of the competition. She was eliminated from the competition, and because of this, her competitor, who was on the right here, Tanya Harding, was now sitting in the ideal spot for the gold. And eventually, she was accused of hiring someone to attack Kerrigan. And eventually, it came out, too, that Tanya Harding admitted to knowing of the plot after the assault. Her husband and her bodyguard were convicted in the incident. Though she was implicated in the attack, Harding went on to compete in the Olympics and to win the 1994 U.S. National Ladies Figure Skating Competition. But later on, she was stripped of her title and banned from competitive skating for life. And because of this whole incident, I mean, I remember when it came out, everyone was just shocked and appalled and thought, how would anybody do that? That they would, you know of this plot, that it was okay to go and to you know, beat this Kerrigan so that she would be out of the competition. But, you know, Harding, Tanya had paid dearly for this incident, and she lost her career, she lost her marriage, and she was stripped of her title. And you may ask, well, what drove her to it? Well, I'm not saying that it was perfectionism, but possibly the drive to be the best, and even if it meant trying to win at any cost. So possibly that was what had happened. Yes, Autumn, it is being recorded, our session today. Okay, so you can see the negative effects of that perfectionism, but you know, let's discuss some of those positive effects of perfectionism, because there are positive things out there when we handle perfectionism in a healthy way. It can be a positive thing. So go ahead and take your pen tools and let me see what you guys would like to share. What are some positive aspects that you see in your child's life when they are using perfectionism to the good? Go ahead and take a minute and take your pen tool or your typing tool and share with us that. And let's read one another's comments here. Yes, somebody says here that they're very proud of when she accomplishes something. That's huge. That sometimes it's a huge satisfaction, and they can get a lot done, can't they? They can set some lofty goals and they can achieve things, and that's a positive thing. She's tenacious, yes. Great. Very neat work. Okay, so being clean or tidy or very neat work, greatly satisfying, pays close attention to detail, ambitious, great, passionate, determined, and proud, gets more than one day's work completed. These are some really positive things to think about. I know that so many times it's easy to see that glass half empty. And sometimes we need to take a moment to enjoy that glass being half full. That it is nice to be able to see, well, you know, yeah, perfectionism can be a real pain. But at the same time, I would like you to focus maybe on some of those positive things of perfectionism, and maybe help your child to see those positive things as well, and how if they can focus on the positive outcomes, that it may be something that they don't feel singled out or ashamed of this trait, that it's not something that they take as a negative self-esteem, because you can focus on the positive parts of perfectionism. Okay? Thank you, you guys, for putting these on, and I hope that this gives you some different light, that by reading some of these other things, that I'm sure that they apply easily to many of you, and that you can see those different areas here that maybe you didn't think of before, that, oh, you know what, that is a positive aspect of perfectionism. Okay, well, I have another example for you of perfectionism being used in a positive way, and listen to the healthy way that this example can be used, possibly, that you can help your children with, okay? So this picture right here is a picture of a man named John Neighbor, and he was a man that used goal setting to help him reach his goals of perfectionism. In 1972, Neighbor watched Mark Spitz triumph at the Munich Olympics. He won 7 gold medals, and which one of the gold medals that he won was in the 100-meter backstroke. Now, that was Neighbor's specialty. That was his area of expertise, was the 100-meter backstroke. He had envisioned himself winning gold at the 1976 Olympics, but he knew that that was going to be pretty hard to beat Mark Spitz's time. And so what he did is that he believed that he would have to improve his time by 4 seconds to achieve that feat. All right? So given the shortness of the 100-meter race, a 4-second improvement would have to be a pretty remarkable accomplishment. That was huge. So what he decided to do was set a goal. Neighbor realized that he had 4 years to achieve this goal. So when he broke this down, what it came out to be is that he would only need to improve 1 second per year. Since Neighbor swam every single day, he only needed to improve 1 out of 365 seconds per day. Okay? And then, since Neighbor swam twice a day, he only needed to improve 1 out of 730 of a second per workout. Then Neighbor dedicated himself to such incremental improvements in performance each day, and stood on the podium as the gold medalist in the 100-meter backstroke in the 1976 Olympics. So he was able to achieve that by breaking it down to a very smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic time frame goal. So I may ask you to take note of that, the acronym SMART. Maybe take note of writing these things down so you can share this with your child on this is one strategy to help your child to be able to set realistic goals of perfectionism. It's not a bad thing that they perhaps want to be, I don't know, the best at something. Maybe it is to be the best musician ever. Well, maybe we need to sit down and say, okay, if you want to be the best musician, let's talk about some things that we can make this a very realistic goal. Be specific. Maybe you want to be the best musician in our town or whatever it may be. Be specific with what part. Measurable. Measure a time period. How are you going to achieve this goal? Okay, set out some realistic things with them as well, and then have a time frame. A goal without a time frame is just a wish. You need to have a time frame to make it a goal. Parents can help students generate goals to determine the steps needed to accomplish the goals. You need to develop an action plan for achieving your goal. And by monitoring your attainment toward that goal, you're going to be able to help that child to be able to cope with their perfectionism. All right, so this is just one way to be able to help them cope. Now, it may not be applicable to all areas of perfectionism, so that's why we're going to continue on here to some additional ideas that will help you. Okay? All right. Let's move on here on my little slide. I thought this was funny. Trouble is you're an approximist. I'm a perfectionist. Whatever. Exactly. I thought that was funny because, you know, that perfectionism can oftentimes even, you know, it can take play into your child's life. That I believe that it is something that is very important for parents to try to help their, my primary expertise is the K-2 in our school, the kindergarten through second grade students. Brandy Maynard is my coworker, and she works, her expertise is the third through fifth grade. And I'm always emphasizing to my parents how important it is that you try to give your tools to these children from a young age, because how much better it is for them to learn how to cope with perfectionism and the issues of hypersensitivities or whatever it may be from a young age, so that as they get older, they have learned from a young age how to cope with that. What if your child never learned any coping skills of perfectionism, and then they finally graduate and move away to college, you know, and they take that into college? A lot of times that's where that underachievement will come, and that they, you know, will drop out of school. By being able to give your child these tools from a young age, then they will do so much better as that transition into middle school, into high school, into college, into their marriage, and even into their family relationships and being a parent someday, okay? So perfectionistic tendencies in moderation aren't bad. Wanting to achieve and persistently trying to succeed are signs of the healthy pursuit of excellence. But when what you achieve becomes who you are, when you tie yourself in knots trying to meet your own high expectations or to please your parents and teachers and coaches and friends, then that is when it is a problem. When you're too afraid to take healthy risks, that's a problem. And a lot of times you'll see that. You'll see that your little perfectionist gifted student will be afraid to take that healthy risk because they are afraid to fail. And so they will just shut down and stop, and they won't try. And so perfectionists a lot of times aren't trying to be difficult, and they aren't trying to be something that they, you know, are just trying to make your day terrible, okay? They really have these feelings of anxiety about making errors. They have extremely high standards and perceive excess expectations and negative criticisms from others. They internalize that. They need your help to cope with these issues of perfectionism, to help them deal with perfectionism in a healthy way. Perfectionists tend to come in many packages. Some perfectionists are intense and are very demanding even from an early age, almost from birth. They are never satisfied with their accomplishments and feel inadequate because there is room for improvement. For others, perfectionism is a learned behavior influenced by sometimes, yes, I hate to say it, but critical parents or teachers who verbalize when a child's making, you know, makes a 90% instead of 100%. And, you know, they may say something like, well, that's nice, hun, but what happened to the other 10%? Oh, that child is crushed, and that's all they're focusing on. It was an A, but yet that 10% made them feel like they got an F and that they failed. Some children expect everything they do to be perfect and everyone around them to treat them perfectly. These children want to have perfect breakfast, perfect interactions on the playground, perfect feedback from teachers, and perfect performances on assignments and tests. Unless everything is perfect, they are disappointed. Others may only demand perfection when it comes to schoolwork. Generally, the first signs of perfectionism will be evident in how children respond to competition. So a lot of times you can see it right away once they're in a competitive environment. They may say, I must be the best, and how they respond to compliments will also help you to identify what kind of perfectionist you have. Maybe something like, they may say something like, it's nice of you to say that, but I should have done much better. Instead of accepting that compliment, they're focusing all the things that they did wrong. For those who struggle with perfectionism, it can be a lifelong challenge. However, I truly believe that people can learn to cope effectively with perfectionistic tendencies. Okay, the next strategy I would like you to talk with your children about is to not take things personally. From kindergarten upward, children tend to equate the evaluations they receive on their assignments as indications of their own self-worth, that they're a good person or not. And the grade of an A may become a stamp of approval for the student. For a perfectionist, a grade of A might be perceived as a poor grade instead of having that A+. Each test, assignment, project becomes another situation that puts their self-concept at risk. Some children avoid this, and they avoid that threat to their self-worth by procrastinating completely. And the work that is eventually submitted only reflects a small commitment of their time. The evaluation of their poor work has little impact on their feelings of self-worth because the children, they rationalize that they got a bad grade because they didn't try or put any time into the grade, okay? So parents may reinforce this by spending time criticizing children for their mistakes rather than acknowledging their success. Oh, you know, like what we just said, that, you know, what about the other 10%, okay? Students need to learn to separate their self-worth from their products. They need to learn that the evaluation simply reflects to the extent which their work matches the criteria used for grading. So, if a student is frustrated when they don't receive the highest grade on a project, parents should allow their children to express their feelings. That's the first thing. Do. Make sure they express their feelings. And then after you give them a little bit of a cooling off period, give them some time to collect themselves. A parent might begin a discussion by asking to see maybe the rubric. A rubric is an important thing here. And remember thinking about rubrics along the way, especially if you have a child that is highly perfectionist, a highly perfectionist child that everything they do in every part of their work, especially I find it in writing, kids have a hard time with that. Maybe set aside your own rubric with them of what they need to accomplish. Then when it comes time to looking at their grade, you can get out that rubric and compare it side by side with their work. And when you have them hand in hand, both together, parents then can discuss with their children how the content of their project matched the rubric. Parents can support their children by focusing first on the content that meets the criteria. Okay, yeah, hey, look at, yes, you did this, you did this, you did this, check it off. And then children might identify one thing to improve on when a new project is assigned by seeing if there was something on that rubric that they did not finish. So you're focusing on the criteria right there and not on that child's self-worth, okay? And that is something that would be good. I like that, Rebecca. Yes, it's fair and it's good. It's something that is helping them to be able to almost have something to blame, I guess, to be able to look at the effort that was put into the work and what you were able to meet. So rubrics are very important to help with those perfectionists, especially when it comes to what you're doing and that work, okay? All right, another strategy that I oftentimes will do with my third grade daughter, she will totally melt down in the middle of a math assignment. In fact, it just happened last night. She did not get something right away, and if they don't master it in 1 to 2 repetitions, it freaks them out because they're used to always being able to master something right away within 1 to 2 repetitions. So the minute they're challenged, a lot of times your gifted kid will have a meltdown, whether it's at 5 or if it's at 15 or 16. Because they just aren't used to being challenged. And so that's why it's so important to put them on that realistic timeline. I've talked to my parents about having, especially with my younger children, if you have in your house, maybe you have a desk that is right there in your front room, that's where the kids do school at, wherever your schooling situation is and whatever their desk is. Laminate a realistic timeline for them. Have it scored from 1 to 10. My paper came off the chart here. Let me change this really quick because I'm noticing just now that my 10 should be over here, okay? And it looks like it It got cut off when it was the right way on my PowerPoint, but I'm looking right now and you don't see it there. So let me hurry and pull this over. Brandy, do you want to cover up my 10 for me really quick? I love having an assistant with me on our schedule, on my lessons. Okay, so anyway, you have here a, there we go, there's my 10. So you have your timeline. And so I might say with my child, okay, let's look at this on a scale of 1 to 10, okay? You lost your homework assignment. Okay, what's the worst thing in the entire world that could happen to you? Well, our house burning down. That would be pretty bad, wouldn't it? Okay, so let's put that as a 10. Now, what's something that's bad but really not too big of a deal? Life goes on. Well, maybe your favorite pencil broke. Okay, so then we're going to put that as a 1. Now, on a scale from 1 to 10, I want you to put your finger on the timeline, or on your number line here, and tell me where losing your homework assignment, or maybe it wasn't losing your homework assignment, that you didn't understand how to divide this particular problem. Put that on the number line here. Make it real to them. Make them understand, okay, you know what, I guess it's not that big of a deal. I actually think that would actually be a 1. And by having that visual organizer, that visual in front of them, because, you know, oftentimes it will happen several times in your schooling day with them. Refer to that realistic line and bring them back to it. Eventually, I would think by you being persistent and continuing to always bring it back to your realistic number line, they will eventually be able to look at that themselves at their desk. And when they are about ready to have a meltdown, I instruct my daughter, listen, hon, when you are starting to not get it, I want you to breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. I want you to do that 5 times. And then, once you have done that, I want you to look at your realistic line, your number line, and I want you to place your issue or your concern on that timeline. Now, in the beginning, no, it's not going to happen as smooth as what I just said, but through persistence and through time, I'm hoping that maybe, you know, if I'm persistent with her every day in doing that, then, you know, over the next maybe 6 months, I may, or it could even be over the next week or 2, I'm going to see improvement. She's going to start to be able to take control of those actions herself and start to exercise a total wonderful thing called patience that a lot of times gifted perfectionists do not have. And that patience with themselves is huge. And I'm going to talk more about patience in just a minute. But this realistic timeline, and another place, if it's not just during work, during schooling, I would also have your realistic line posted on your refrigerator, that visual to go back to. When they're having a meltdown, point to it. Eventually they can imagine, you know, that they can also have that realistic line in their mind, but sometimes having that visual reminder is a great way to get them to remember what they need to do. So I am having a phone call come through right now. I need to hurry and turn off. I'm sorry about that. Okay, let me turn this off. All right, so I need to mute my phones before I start my sessions, and I completely forgot. I had a crazy morning with babysitters and stuff with my kids this morning so I could teach. All right, and that is not my babysitter, just so you know, so no, my kid's okay. All right, let's come back here. So the realistic line. Remember it, please use it. That is probably one of the most effective strategies that I have seen have an immediate outcome that I've seen really help my daughter. It's something that has been an immediate tool that I've been able to use with her on a daily basis, that I can see a change and I can see a positive result from it. So all of the things in here, constantly you're going to want to continue to work with your child on. But this is one of my immediate things that I've seen that has started to help her. All right, the next strategy I'd like you to talk about with you is knowing when to quit. Gifted students need to know that whatever topic they pick for a project, they will find more possible references available than they can possibly manage to acquire and read in the time allotted, okay? Because that's the way they are. They absorb and they take everything in. So parents can help your gifted students by developing skills and determining which available resources will be the most useful and accessible for them. Okay, make it so that, you know, it's not so much stuff, so overwhelming. Help them. Give them those, you know, be that little Jiminy Cricket on the side of them, giving them that guidance that, okay, you know, which things, okay, you've got 30 references here, 30 different books that you can take all this information to put into your research paper. Let's narrow it down, hun, and let's look and see what's probably going to be the best, most reliable resources. Let's take our top 5 and let's take those things and let's narrow it down. Try to work with them in trying to be able to do that. Perfectionistic students may need assistance getting closure at each step of the project. Parents, you can help them with that by, one, remember I talked about the rubric, and parents can help their children by routinely having discussions on the expectations for the project. Parents can assist their children by asking questions about the parameters of the project, minimum and maximum length, number of references, expected financial costs, whatever it may be, okay? So whatever you providing that rubric, you, or maybe if it's in a, you know, like the online school, they have a rubric there. If you need to make modifications to that rubric to keep it within a parameter that you know is going to be doable and realistic, remember, go back to the SMART acronym, you have that freedom to do that. Just because it's on the online school doesn't mean that it's in permanent concrete that you can't change things. You have that flexibility. You're a homeschool parent that has that right to be able to make exceptions or changes to that rubric to make sure the parameter is going to be appropriate for your child. This is an accommodation that must be made. Okay, so let's go back here then. Parents can also help their children develop monitoring skills to check that their projects fall within the expected parameters. So maybe having that rubric that you looked at and went over really well before you teach them the session or that lesson, you know, and then from there you come back and you refer to it often. So they know when to quit, because a lot of times they'll just get going and so overwhelmed, they get everything and just absorbing all this information, and then it's completely overwhelming. They can't bring that in, and that's a large reason for underachievement. They just can't fit everything that they know or want to put into that paper. And by you being able to help them know when to quit, that is huge. Okay, so let's go ahead. Leanne asked, she was late and missed the explanation of the rubric. By being able to provide a rubric, Leanne, you're helping them to be able to set realistic expectations and being able to focus on the effort that was put into the assignment rather than them taking it in and thinking that it has something to do with their self-worth and who they were, that they were a good person or a bad person. By being able to focus and check off what they accomplished on their rubric, it focuses on something very fair to them. That, okay, yes, I did the things that were required here, or no, you know what, I didn't. And so, okay, that would explain why I didn't do well on that portion of the paper. Okay, so that is something that would be important. A rubric, you know what, Brandy, I can look for a rubric once I'm finished with the, are you asking for me to show an example of a rubric? Because I'm sure I have something in my files, but I don't have one right here right away. If you have something, Brandy, can you show a rubric? Let me look up and I will send it to you. Great. If not, once I'm finished with the rest of the session, I will definitely do that and look for it. Maybe while you guys are asking questions, Brandy can filter that so you're not having to wait too long for me to find a good rubric. Is there any confusion on what a rubric is? Does anyone want me to explain what I mean by a rubric? Sometimes I get used to those teacher terms and forget that, you know, sometimes we use that teacher lingo that. Okay, great. Okay, a rubric is something that shows the parameters of what you expect in a lesson. So for instance, when I'm assigning maybe a paper to a class, I would tell them the rubric is, yes, it's like a chart of progress. Okay, you're gonna do a research paper, and it has to be 3 pages typed. And my research paper, the things that I want you to be able to have within it is it needs to have an opening, you know, it has to have a thesis statement. It has to consist of at least 10 references. It needs to have its work cited. See what I'm saying? I'm telling you all the parameters, the objectives of what I want to have within that paper. And if they can look at that rubric and check those things off, then they are able to see, oh yeah, I did do these things, or no, I didn't. Okay? Let me read a little bit here in the chat what you guys are saying here. Thanks for mentioning, tried to log on and find gifted resources, thinking maybe I came across another site with the same or similar name. I will definitely research again. Yes, and what's our website to be able to get into our newsletter, www.giftedresources.com. You can click directly on that and it'll take you to our site, and we always post our trainings there afterwards too, but you'll be able to get your this recording today from your teacher that sent you the information on it. Great, thank you, Autumn. It's a checklist of items that are expected in an assignment. That's a lot more, that's simpler than what I tried to explain. That was good, thank you. Okay, so Brandy has a rubric for you here. In fact, let me cut and paste this, and we'll go ahead and visit this really quick if you want, Brandy. You guys want to click on that really quickly here? Oh, great. I'm going to hurry and take a screenshot of that and just show you a real quick rubric. It shows the dimensions of the task, how many points are given to each thing, and so that's important to be able to see too. So let me go ahead and come back into the room, and I'll post this for you guys. See this rubric right here? All right, so it shows the dimension, the task. So this is just an idea of a rubric. There's several rubrics out there, and you can Google them. But then you should be able to have an idea of how many points or how much weight is on each thing. So let's say maybe your child got a 90%, but they did do a thesis statement, but let's say the assignment had the weight of the thesis statement was 50% of their grade. Well, then you could help them. Hey, this is a really important part of it. Let's put there's a lot of weight on your thesis statement here. Let's spend a lot of time on this and making sure it is really good, okay? So that is something that that would be important to use. So that is what the rubric is about. Any questions before I move on here and going off of when to know when to quit, knowing when to quit? Any other questions you guys would like me to address before I move on? I see a few people typing, so I'll just give you a second here. Okay. And YB, this whole session is talking about perfectionism and tools that you can give your child. And as you watch this recorded link, this will make more sense to you, YB. Okay? All right, so it looks like then if I have any more questions come across, I will make sure that I try to address those, or Brandy will too as she filters through. So, okay. All right, let's go ahead here. And this is the next strategy I would like you to focus on when dealing with your perfectionist child, to help give them another tool. Match the time commitment to the value of the assignment. That's kind of what I talked a little bit about with that rubric, okay? Perfectionistic students need to learn that if they want to earn the highest grades, they should put the most effort into the assignment that counts the most. For example, I might have given a 5-page essay assignment worth 10% each, and one 25-page research paper worth 50% of the term grade. I hope that my students are spending 5 times the amount of their course effort on the research paper than on any one of the essay assignments. Okay, so making sure to help them to be able to focus on the things that are the worth the most. Okay, matching their time commitment to the value of the assignments. Perfectionist students have a hard time sometimes grasping this concept, and often spend inordinate amount of time on simple projects by greatly extending the scope of the project. Parents can help children express their understanding of being able to match the time commitment to the value of the assignments. And have any of you seen that with your gifted children that are perfectionists, that sometimes that they will just spend there's so much time on something that maybe isn't worth or mean as much? Yes, Autumn says yes, I've seen that. Okay, so yeah, that is why you want to help them to be able to match that time commitment to the value of the assignment, and help them, rationalize it. Maybe even if you have a visual learner, put it out in front of them. Now look at, hun, this is 50% of your grade and this is 10% of your grade. Let's do both are important, but let's spend the time on the thing that is so much more. We need to put more time into it instead of spending just as much time on that 10% of your grade as you did on the 50% grade, okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and another strategy to help your perfectionist child is to study the lives of eminent people. This is a really, really great way to help them realize that no one's perfect. And sometimes they get thinking that they need, that is very real. They think they need to be perfect in everything and everywhere. A 12-year-old perfectionistic student might win a state science fair and still be disappointed that the project is not the theory of relativity. The 12-year-old student needs to know that Einstein didn't produce the theory of relativity at 12 either. In fact, at 12, Einstein's potential greatness was masked by poor school performance. It took Einstein 20 theories to properly formulate the equations for the theory of relativity. Gifted students can learn many lessons from studying the lives of eminent people by reading biographies and autobiographies. One basic lesson to learn is that the path to success is not a simple linear one. Barriers such as rejection, illness, economic misfortunes, and relationship issues, all of these things can make it difficult for an individual to achieve success and maintain it. Now, what you can do is parents might help students with the task of studying the lives of eminent people by examining the physical, economic, cultural, psychological, sociological barriers that these people faced and the strategies and qualities they used to overcome their barriers. So all of these things would help them to come back down to reality, remember that, nobody is perfect. And come back to what I had mentioned earlier. I said about patience. You're teaching your child how to deal with patience. And patience with persistence is what it is. I need to tell you something that's very interesting that I found a very interesting thing about patience. The lessons we learn from patience, it can actually help to cultivate our character. It can lift our lives and heighten, truly, our happiness. There was a study done in the 1960s by a professor of Stanford University. He began a modest experiment testing the willpower of 4-year-old children, okay? What he did is he placed before them a large marshmallow and then told them they could eat it right away, or if they waited maybe 15 minutes or so, then they could have not one but 2 marshmallows. He then left the children alone in the room and he watched behind a two-way mirror to see what the child did. Now, his studies and his findings were that some of the children ate the marshmallow immediately. Some could only wait a few minutes before giving in to temptation. And his findings were that only 30% were able to wait, okay? The thing that was interesting on the experiment is that the professor moved on to other areas of research, okay? Because, there's only so much you can do with 4-year-olds and marshmallows. So he continued to move on to other areas of this experiment. But as time went on, he continued to keep track of the children. And he began to notice an interesting correlation. The children who could not wait they ended up struggling later in life and had more behavioral problems, while those who waited tended to be more positive and better motivated. Those kids who ended up waiting in his experiment that he tracked, they had higher grades, they ended up having higher incomes, and they had healthier relationships than the children who didn't. What started as a simple experiment with children and marshmallows became a landmark study suggesting that the ability to wait, to be patient, was a key character trait that might predict later success in life. Patience is something that's not automatically learned. It's something we have to teach our children and help them to learn patience. Patience requires actively working toward worthwhile goals and not getting discouraged when results don't appear instantly or without effort. There's an important concept here. Patience is not passive resignation, nor is it failing to act because of our fears, all right? Patient means active waiting and active enduring. It means staying with something and doing all that we can. You have an amazing opportunity to help your children learn the value of patience coupled with realistic goals. So, you know, that is something that I can't emphasize enough. I think that as you continue to work with your children and help them with the strategies we discussed today, with being able to help them continue to work towards that perfectionism in a positive light, being able to be smart with using that acronym, being able to help them along the way, you are going to help them have a happier life, because it can be debilitating, that perfectionism. It can be something that they will be so unhappy with themselves and their low self-esteem. It can lead to depression. It can lead to terrible things that you hear of kids that are committing suicide and what forth in life. But by being able to hopefully apply these strategies we talked about today, I hope that you will be able to see some positive tools that you can help your child with. Some perfectionistic students are going to expect everything in their life to be perfect every day. This is a really unrealistic expectation that will inevitably lead to frustration when it's not met. Celebrate the fact that your child has high ideals. Try to help your child move forward each day. A first step is to help your child find an activity that will help the child feel as if he or she is making a difference in the world. A lot of times what you can do is go ahead and maybe help your child do something like volunteering with the United Way agency, something that they feel that they're making a difference in the world. This can help them to be able to feel like they are making, doing something that is good and help them with their self-esteem. Remember, in going away with what we're talking about today, remember not to praise results, but encourage the effort. Since the perfectionist life can be very stressful, perfectionistic individuals need to find hobbies and pursuits that can bring joy. Whether it's jogging or yoga, playing bridge or solitaire, or listening to symphonies or even rock bands, active engagement in vocational interests can be psychologically and physically rewarding to your child. I hope that you will find some of the strategies that we mentioned today in our session that will help your children enjoy their journey through life by being able to cope with their perfectionistic tendencies in a positive way. I just want to cite some of the resources that I used in preparing for this session today. An excellent book is Perfectionism, What's Bad About Being Too Good by Adderholt and Goldberg. I definitely would encourage you to get that book if you would like to. It continues to give additional strategies for perfectionism. And it talks a lot more about the root of perfectionism, why it is there, and it continues then to give more strategies. Living with Intensity by Daniels and Pachowski. And I did a lot of research into the articles by Dr. Michael Pyrett, I think is how you pronounce it, that you can look into those additional resources if you would like. And I hope that many of your questions have been answered today. Yes, the session will be recorded, or it is recorded, and we'll make sure we send that out. I'd like to open the time for any questions or comments that you would like to have or would like to address at this time. And we'll open that up for a few minutes here, and then I will stop the recording. Make sure that you do, we have so many followers. Brandy has been amazing with getting our Facebook page going. And we have followers all over the world. So if you are interested, if you're a Facebook person and you like to have that social interaction with others, make sure you do visit us on our Facebook page and add us to as a friend. It's facebook.com/21giftedresources. All right. Let's see, Michelle says, Any suggestions for how to address the throw it away if it isn't perfect issue? Yes, definitely, Michelle. I would. That's an immediate thing that I would use that number line that I talked about. Okay, how big of a deal is this? All right, going back to having them take a few minutes to breathe. Okay, yes, there's a smudge on your paper. Okay, let's breathe. We erased it. All right, now let's look at the number line. How big of a deal is this compared to the house burning down? All right, trying to help them. It's going to be hard at first. They may have a little bit of a meltdown at first, and being able to accept that. And there may be a little bit of OCD in there that you may want to discuss with a professional. But being able to help them see things realistically of what is most important in life, I think that is going to be a strategy to help them pull that in with that number line. Because oftentimes they do want to throw it away. But again, Michelle, going back to all the things that we talked about, being able to have a rubric. Well, we can make this perfect by following the checklist here. Are you doing more than what is required on the checklist? Then it doesn't need to be in there. Let's use this rubric to help us check it off. That may be something additional there. Charlene says, how do I combat the other side of the coin when it seems they give up and don't care? That's kind of a difficult one, because I think some of it can be, Charlene, can be a motivation issue. And I would encourage you to listen to our session that we did last month. So many of these issues, they are intertwined and tangled with one another. And motivation in gifted students can be for a number of other reasons besides just that perfectionism, that it's not perfect, they want to just throw it away. That maybe if they don't care, you need to find out the root of the problem and have some motivation and some different goals to be able to set. And you may need to help them set realistic goals. Maybe their goals are too lofty, and that's why they don't care, because they know that it's almost impossible to reach those goals. So definitely, I would go back through, and in fact, let me tell you guys the way you can print off this slideshow or this whiteboard that we just did. Go up to File on the top of your screen, go down to where it says Print, and then click Whiteboard. So if you all want to do that right now, you can go up to File, Print, and then Whiteboard, and then it should have selected all pages, and then click OK. And then that will allow you to have all the different strategies written out for you. And I will also post these strategies on our newsletter and on our Gifted Resources site. We'll have these posted for you in a quick format that you'll be able to refer to right there in front of you, have in your hands these strategies to apply, okay? Especially for those of you that came in late. Francis says, how can I encourage him to show his work rather than doing it in his head? You know, Francis, that's a hard one, because I know that there's a focus, at least in the state of Idaho, our math initiative, to be able to have kids show their work. Part of that is important so we can see where they're at, what their strategies are in math. But another accommodation is sometimes that if they can figure it out, it's okay to let them do that in their head. A lot of times they're beyond that. And so it depends, I would say, Francis, on what it is you're trying to see. If it's something you need to know that they have mastered, maybe perhaps a math skill that you need to know they've done, maybe you can say, hey, you know, talk to them about it, that I know you can do this, but I want to just see what you're thinking. Will you do this for me? And just be able to check it at least once. And then as they continue forth, if they are missing any, then you have to come back and say, you know what, this is something that is important, being able to show your work so you can come back. Look at right up here, this is where that mistake happened. And you would never be able to go back and to be able to see that mistake if we didn't have it written out. So this is the reason it's important for us to be able to come back to it. And maybe give him some sort of a motivation strategy to help them show their work, especially those younger kids. I really believe it's important for them to be able to show that math the way that they're able to figure out those problems in the beginning. So, you know, maybe some sort of a motivational strategy of a reward that they are able to receive when you have them, you know, giving you a problem and not wanting to do something. And again, that goes back to the session we did last month, so I encourage you to listen to it because it goes into a lot more detail on why you would provide that kind of a reward. Okay, let's see. Yes, please, please, please join us and invite any parents you know of the gifted kids. How do I motivate a procrastinator? Well, this is something, and Brandy, please jump in here anytime you'd like. I would love, Brandy's wonderful. She's the other gifted specialist in our school that she has her master's in gifted ed and a doctorate in leadership, and so she has a lot of wonderful insights too. So Brandy, anytime you want to say something, please just raise your hand or jump in. How do you motivate a procrastinator? I would think that that would go back to my motivational strategies and the session we did last month. I think you need to find the root of the problem of why they're procrastinating. If it is a perfectionistic issue, I would definitely go back to the things that we discussed today and the strategies, making sure that you're setting realistic goals with that child and talking about things, working it through with them. But if it is a motivation thing, there's a lot intertangled there that I would definitely go back into looking at that session. So you can find that recorded link on www.giftedresources.com. Scroll down on the page to where our videos are and find the one on motivation and gifted kids, because like I said, you have to find the root of that problem. Shauna says, I struggle with that. My son can do just so much in his head, but when he gets stuck, I don't know where he went wrong. I try to encourage him to write it out so I can follow along. Yeah, and that is important, Shauna, is especially those younger ones, that when they are learning how to do those skills, yes, they can master so much in their head, but when they don't know, then that's when you tell them, let's redirect, we need to do this, work this through, because it's not the right answer. So let's go through and let's be investigators. We are doing, we are like these, make it a game, okay? Especially with my young kids. You can tell I work with little ones all the time, but make it a game. You are two detectives, and you're math detectives. You're trying to find the root of the problem, where it was that we went wrong, and maybe you can even give them a badge or, whatever it is that you're able to identify where it is that they went wrong. That goes back to my motivation that we talked about last month. Again, I encourage you to listen to that because you can make things a fun way for them to learn as well. Autumn says, I have a daughter who has to be first to finish everything in class. When it comes to reading, I believe she is losing the information she reads. How can I train her to slow down her brain? Okay, if it is a competition thing, Autumn, then I think going back to talking to her the importance of what it is she's doing, but then I would also do as many comprehension checkpoints with her so she can see that she needs to come back and answer these questions immediately afterwards, and she's going to start to see the value of reading for comprehension rather than just reading to be fast and finished. Maybe giving her a motivational strategy to help her to be able to answer those comprehension questions correctly. Again, go back to that training from last month. Let's see, and that, come back to here, Charlene, yes, if it can't be perfect, why do it? Again, I would come back to these motivational strategies. Let's come back here and look at some of these things we talked about, making sure that you're setting specific goals with them so that they can know that nobody is perfect. Talk about the different people in life, the biographies that I talked about, discussing eminent people, and that nobody is perfect, and then moving on from there. All right, I'm trying to move through these. It seems like there's a lot here. My oldest son is getting the Dragon dictation software for Christmas because his brain works faster than his hand, and that's a great differentiation strategy. Good job. And I wasn't aware of the many characteristics of gifted children. Information is truly right on point. Great, YB, I'm glad to hear that. Brandy says she would like to share with us a Pomodoro technique she uses. Excellent, wonderful. Okay, Brandy, please take the microphone and I'll continue to try to address some of these questions here.
All right, hi everybody, this is Brandy. It looks like I'm talking without my microphone, so I'm just using the microphone that's on my computer, but it looks like it's coming through just fine. So the Pomodoro technique, and that stands for tomato, which is such an odd, awkward kind of a thing, but the technique really works. There's this guy who had a kitchen timer in the shape of a tomato. You may have seen these on your grandma's kitchen counter, but he came up with this technique called the Pomodoro technique. And the way that it works And this is how I focus myself. This is how I do my best work. It's how I motivate my own children to stay focused, and I use it all the time for chores and other things around our house as well. So you set the timer for 25 minutes. So you go 25 minutes laser focus, and this is all based on the rhythms within our bodies. And you may notice that after 25 minutes, and I've done this before, I've looked down, I've kept a little notebook next to me. At about the 23 to 25 minute mark, I find myself wandering to Facebook, checking Twitter. I'm just no longer focused. So our bodies work for about 25 minutes. And so you set a timer for 25 minutes, and then you have 5 minutes off. And the off means up. You're away from the computer, you're away from whatever it is you're working on, you go take a full 5-minute break. Come back, focus for 25 more minutes, 5-minute break, 25 more minutes, 5-minute break, 25 more minutes, and then a 15-minute break. So it's 25 on, 5 off, 25 on, 5 off, 25 on, 5 off, 25 on, 15 minutes off. And you can go through your whole day like this, having this kind of a rhythm, and it works beautifully with the way that our body is designed. I also wanted to chat for just a moment about the Dragon Naturally Speaking software that was mentioned earlier. And this is a plug for my class tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm teaching a class. It's basically using 21st century technology to teach writing. So you will never see anything. I don't think you've ever seen anything like it. I have been developing it over the last, I have been developing it since I wrote my dissertation, but really working on it and what it was going to look like over the last couple of weeks. And basically what I've done is I've taken some really cutting edge technology and put the technology to the writing process. And one piece of technology I'm going to share with you tomorrow is called Google Voice. And Google Voice is it's a voicemail type of a system. It's a number that you have assigned to you, but when you call in and leave a message, it actually transcribes the message. So it's one technique that your kids can use, and you can use too, if you want your own personal transcription service. So I'm going to talk about how that works. It will, again, it's called Google Voice, and it'll take any kind of voice message that you leave on the system from a regular old telephone, and it will transcribe that voicemail for you, so you'll have it in text. So imagine how cool that would be for your children who are reluctant writers. So a lot of the tools that I'll be sharing tomorrow in tomorrow's session will be about reluctant writers and how you can motivate them using the latest technology. The class will begin at the same time that it began today. So just an hour ago is when our class began today. And I'll go ahead and put the link into the chat area. So if you'd like to join us for that class, we would sure love to have you. Thanks for the time, Carly.
Thank you, Brandy, for sharing that. That is wonderful, and I think that every little bit helps. It always helps to be able to hear from others and to be able to add to that. So I just wanted to hurry and give you guys a real quick recap of some of the strategies we talked about today, that you can have these. Let me just finish typing this one more for you. And then I will put this on the board if you guys are wanting to be able to have something to take away with you, okay? So let me just do a real quick snipping tool and put this on the board for you guys, that you can write these specific strategies down and be able to, and like I said, we'll be sure to put these in the newsletter this week, but there you go. So those are those strategies. If you would like, what we talked about today in a real quick summary of what we talked about. And so, make sure that you look back at these things, and it's going to take some practice at the beginning to remember what it is you need to be able to apply. And then please do everything. I didn't include, Brandy, while you were talking I was typing, so I didn't include the things that Brandy had mentioned, so that's something you would want to add as well. All right, any other questions before we finish up on our session today? And thank you, Brandy. There's her information down there on the Pomodoro technique. Okay, it looks like we, I think, have covered most everything, and I sure appreciate your guys' comments, your questions and concerns, and please make sure that you visit us, like we said, here at the bottom, our giftedresources.com page, as well as our Facebook. So everyone take care, and hopefully we'll see you all back tomorrow on Brandy's session. And I'm going to just stop recording, and then Tanya, I'll come back to your question here. Thank you. Bye-bye.